These small, lightweight, alcohol-burning backpacking stoves you can take with you into the woods are super convenient to have, even if you're going to be building a campfire. You can put an ounce of fuel in it, light it up, and have boiling water in just a few minutes. They do have one weakness though, and that is very, very cold weather. Down to about 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, you're okay, but below that, they're problematic. They don't want to light and they don't want to stay lit. So I'm going to share with you the tricks that I use to make sure that my alcohol stoves don't embarrass me when I'm out in the woods with them. And the first trick is probably the simplest. I'll put the stove and the alcohol fuel inside my outer clothing next to my body to keep them warm for about 20 minutes before I'm ready to light them up. And usually that's all it takes, down to about 15 degrees. Below that, the second problem comes into play, and that is the ground is going to act as a huge heat sink, sucking the heat right out of the stove, and again, it's not going to want to stay lit. So I like to insulate my stove from the ground using corrugated cardboard because this has an air gap in it that's a good insulator. I cut a disc out the same size as the lid to my Stanley cook pot. And I do it this size because this fits well in the pouch that I carry my cook kit in. Now, if you don't have the Stanley cook pot, this lid is 4 inches in diameter. So I can either trace around it with a pencil, the lid, or I can use a compass set for 4 inches. And I'll cut that out with scissors. I also like to cover this disc with heavy-duty aluminum foil. The foil will trap the airspace, trap air in the airspace, and it will reflect heat back up to the stove and to the pot. And that's my ground reflector. Now when I put the stove on it, it's insulated from the big heat sink that the ground is. The next problem comes in when I put my ice cold pot with ice cold water on top of the stove. If you've ever seen this, what happens is as soon as the pot touches the stove, it acts as the big heat sink now, and the flames just die back and often will go out entirely. So I have to insulate the stove from the pot. And I do that with wire standoffs that look like this. And I make these from binder clips. And it's very easy to remove these, just squeeze together. Now bend the legs. At a fair angle, maybe more than that. And spread them apart. What I want is for them not to rattle around when they're in the stove. About like that. Now the pot will be resting only on these 4 points, so there won't be a lot of thermal transfer between the ice cold pot and the stove. One last thing I do with my stoves, these kinds of alcohol stoves are pretty susceptible to wind. So I'll make a wind screen from a Foster's beer can. This one is about 3.5 inches tall. I use it when I'm using my Stanley cook pot. And it works well for that. It doesn't work when I'm using the kettle though. The pot needs to rest right down on top of the stove. These type, you need to snuff out this central flame that will be burning just uncontrolled. It's not very efficient burning, so you want to snuff that out by putting the pot on it. So I'll make one 1.5 inches tall so the pot rests still on the stove, not on the windscreen. And there you have it, guys. 4 different ideas for making sure your alcohol stoves are successful out in the woods. Warm up the stove and the alcohol against your body for about 20 minutes. Insulate from the ground. Insulate from the pot with these wire standoffs. And use a windscreen. Guys, thanks for watching.